Redline Logbook here to explain to you Evilus. And of course, there's going to be spoils in this video. So to start off with, Evilus is not just one person or group or familia, it's an organization. We don't know how far back it goes, but it has to go back centuries because they were involved in the construction of Noxus. Partially, I'll explain that later. Quite simply, as the gods were ascending down to the mortal plane, some of them came down for more sinister reasons. Many just wanted to inflict as much havoc and death and destruction as humanly possible. And so they were able to find a group of like-minded mortals who wanted also to take part in this evil. And so, for hundreds of years, this group of familias worked together inside of Aurorio to commit acts of evil and debauchery here and there, but obviously always hiding away because they didn't want to get annihilated by the Zeus and Hera familias. But after the Zeus and Hera familias 15 years ago were wiped out by the one-eyed black dragon, the power vacuum led to the Dark Age, which was a period in time when Evilus and the Guild were now fighting over the heart and soul of Aurorio. This war between both sides lasted an entire 10 years. These 10 years were truly the darkest period for Aurorio, and many believe it would actually be its end. The reason why Evilus had so much power was because it wasn't just the evil familias within it, it was all its followers that were outside of the familias, because they had allies in the guild, amongst the merchants, amongst civilian population. The fact is, you didn't actually know who you could trust in your day-to-day life, because anyone could be a spy for Evilus. They even had allies outside of Aurorio that you couldn't trust. And so there was a sense of paranoia across all of Aurorio during the Dark Age. Now, Evilus had three major familia leadership: the Thanos familia, the Electo familia, and the Apet familia. These three familias were the leadership because they were the strongest, plain and simple. Might made right. The Thanatos familia had Valletta. Second name, the Erect. Reason why she got this name is because she likes to trap people and then slaughter them. She is a complete psychopath whose entire pleasure in life is killing. Even if there's a strategy that's all of Evilus agrees upon, whenever she gets the urge to kill, she'll just break the plan and just start killing innocent people in the streets. And if the rest of her men try to stop her from ruining their plan, she'll just kill them as well. And she's able to get away with this because she's a level 5. And Aurorio at this time meant she was one of the top Avengers. With that being said, this doesn't mean she's an idiot. In fact, she is usually the brains of Evilus. She's usually the one who comes up with the best strategies on defeating Aurorio, which is the reason why she's so willing to break her own plans a bit, because she knows a little bit of killing won't actually hurt what she's trying to do. As a result of this, her and Finn basically became rivals, because the two of them could quickly figure out each other's plans and work around each other, leading to a very high-grade chess match between the two of them. The only other notable member of the familia was Barker Predict, who was a level 4, but he had no interest in what Evilus was doing. He didn't care about it. He was cursed by Daedalus's bloodline to finish the labyrinth, so that's all he cared about. In fact, working on the labyrinth is the whole reason why he became a level 4. He worked his body to exhaustion, he barely ate, and he barely slept, and as a result of this, that level of intensity and work was the equivalent of fighting in the dungeon up to a level 4, as that's how he leveled up, because he kept pushing himself to the brink of death consistently. In fact, the only reason why he's a part of Thanos' familia is because Thanatos actually just liked him, and he just wanted to spend time with the guy. The rest of the Thanatos familia are a bunch of weaklings. They're either level 1 or 2, and the reason for this is because they're basically just people who've been brainwashed by Thanatos. See, Thanatos is the god of death. As a result of this, his duty in heaven is to take people's souls, cleanse them, so they can then freshly become reincarnated into new people. And so, many of the people that follow him believe that when they die, he can reunite them with their dead relative after the reincarnation process. And this could be someone as simple as a child missing their parents to an adult missing their lover. And Thanatos takes this grief and manipulates it to the point where these people are even willing to commit suicide bombing. With that being said, both Valletta and Thanatos have mentioned multiple times that this is all crap, that Thanatos cannot do that. Once you go through the reincarnation process, you are wiped clean. You won't know about your past lives, which means you won't know about your past lovers. Once you enter heaven and you go through that process, it's over. As for the god himself, Thanatos, what he desires is to bring back the age of monsters once again, where the world was just flooded with monsters from the dungeon. And the reason for this is because the man's actually a workaholic. As a god of death, he personifies nihilism to a perfect degree. He loves death just for the sake of death. His favorite thing in life, up in heaven, was taking the soul, cleansing it, and sending it back down to earth. He loved doing that. The meaningless act of repeatedly doing that over and over again, and death for the sake of death, was something that gave him meaning. And once the hole was covered and the heroes stopped the monsters, death began to slow, which means his entire purpose in life just ended, basically. Currently, the Thanatos Familia has been completely annihilated. All of its members are dead, and their god is sent back to heaven. The Electo Familia is considered to be probably the most brutal of all of Evilus, for the simple fact that they don't just kill their enemies, they actively go out of their way to cause as much physical and emotional and mental damage as humanly possible. During these 7 days of blood, the majority of Evilus's familias went after adventurers directly, but the Electo Familia, they went after civilians, actively slaughtering as many as they could in front of adventurers just to show how helpless and weak they really were. Oh, don't get me wrong, they then turned their blades on the adventurers themselves just to hammer in that point, but they actively went out of their way to make sure that the adventurers of Aurorio were scarred before death. The Dis Sisters are a perfect example of this. They are the reason why the Electo Familia is one of the top familias in Evilus, and that is because the Dis Sisters are both level 5. They're twin sisters. The older one, Dia, is an elf, and the younger sister, Veta, the dark elf. Quick explanation, there is no such thing between a light and dark elf in Danmachi universe. All elves are elves. They just happen to have different color skin like humans do. So the fact that these two are sisters just means one of their parents was light skin, the other one was dark skin. That's it. And as a member of this familia, these two are also complete psychopaths who enjoy causing mental and physical torture to others. And the two they like to target the most are Hedin and Hegna, because they are also a white and dark elf, but they're not brothers or related at all. They just happen to be in the same familia, and so as a result of this, the twins see them as kind of lovers/rivals. And when I say they're lovers, I mean that's completely in the Dis sisters' head. When I said these two are nuts, I mean they are completely in their own world where they make up a new reality for themselves. In fact, during the 7 days of blood, to mess with Hedin and Hegna, the two of them actively went out of their way to target Hegni, so this way Hedin had to leave his post to save Hegna. Why is that important? Because Hedin's job was to command the Freya's forces and protect 4 separate shelters that were housing the civilian population that were escaping the bloodbath. So when Hedin left his post to save Hegni, that's when the sisters sprung their trap. They activated a magic that they were holding in for a while, and 4 rings of fire blasted down at all of the shelters. Hedin only had enough time and power to save one of them. Everyone else in all 3 shelters burned to death. Hundreds, if not thousands of people died. The sisters then gloated about how he failed to protect those people, and all of their deaths were his fault. In the current story, both the Dis sisters and the rest of the familia are all dead, and their god, Electo, was sent back to heaven. The Apate Familia, they are the closest things to atheists in the Danmachi universe. I know calling them atheists is an odd thing to say because obviously gods exist. In fact, they are part of a god's familia, but they have no respect for divinity or of anything sacred whatsoever. They are complete heretic on all aspects. They have no issue killing gods or experimenting on spirits, and spirits in the Danmachi universe are basically they're angels. Before the gods ascended from heaven, they basically communicated to spirits to then help the mortal race. So experimenting on a spirit is already heresy, but killing a god? That is the worst thing you can do. Even Ryu, when she was in her bloodlust and just slaughtering Evilus member after Evilus member, she never killed any other gods. She never crossed that line. But these guys, the Apex Familia, they don't care. They had some pretty powerful members of their Familia. Their captain, vice captain, and all executives were at least level 5, which made them the strongest Familia in all of Evilus, on par with the Loki and Freya Familias at the time. And they would even augment their own strength with drugs and curses. Their way of doing things was very cult/mad scientist, where they would happily experiment on their own bodies, partially to become stronger, but also just because they could. Once again, these people are heretics in every sense of the word. Nothing is sacred to them, not even themselves. Now, the captain, the vice captain, all the executives were killed before the 7 days of blood were able to occur. They were slaughtered by the Freya Familia, but they were able to keep their status thanks to a staff officer within the Familia named Bazaram, who is a raccoon beast person and very much a mad scientist priest kind of thing going on. He was able to recruit the remnants of the Osiris Familia, their second tiers, a total of 12 level 5 adventurers. He was able to do this back when Zeus and Freya Familia were still around. You see, the Osiris Familia teamed up with a couple others to try to take down their great rivals, Zeus and Freya, and they got crushed. Osiris lost all of their top executives, including their level 7 captain. Those 12 level 5s decided to defect from Osiris's Familia as a way to get revenge for the annihilation. But when the Zeus and Freya Familia got wiped out by the one-eyed black dragon, they all decided they were going to just leave. They had no reason to stay part of Evilus if Zeus and Hera were gone, but Bazaram had no interest in letting them go. He was basically in charge in augmenting their strength with drugs and curses as well, but in their last maintenance for their upgrading power, he did more than just give them drugs. He attached a magic item to the back of their necks that went into their brain stems that was powered by a spirit. Everyone knows about the ancient stories of heroes where spirits would turn into weapons to help fight against the monsters for the ancient heroes. So, Bazaram wanted to replicate this. Now, he wasn't able to replicate the power of an ancient hero, but the results were still impressive. They did become much stronger. They also were now able to use magic without chanting, and they had a regeneration factor. And the best part for Bazaram is that they were completely loyal to him, and they followed any order he gave. The only weakness that they had was the fact that they just weren't really sentient beings anymore. They showed characteristics of a basic animal, where they understood that fire would kill them if they got hit by it, and they also showed concern of death, and you could give them a weapon and order them to fight, and they would be able to do that. And of course, they would be able to cast their magic without chanting. But the problem was, the years of combat experience that they once had was basically lost at this point. They could only do what they were programmed to do, and that wasn't the most sophisticated thing, especially coming from a man like Brahman, who really was just a lunatic mad scientist. When it was all said and done, all 12 spirit soldiers were killed, Brahman was also killed, and their god Apet was sent back to heaven. Now, there were plenty other gods that were part of Evilus and their followers. Evilus was a madman that was a part of a weaker faction within Evilus. He still had the respect of the other officers, but he was mostly respected for the fact that he was a devout follower of evil in general. Otherwise, he was just a level 3 who couldn't really back up what he wanted to do. We don't know who his god is, but we do know that he was the mastermind with 27th Floor Massacre. What happened was that him and his familia led a bunch of good familias to the 27th floor into an area where there were 3 or 4 entrances, and then him and all of his familia members led a pass parade of hundreds, if not thousands of monsters to just collide in all directions. Him, his entire familia, and all of the familias that were in pursuit of him were brutally slaughtered by these monsters. Evilus at this moment was about to die when he was basically resurrected by a corrupted spirit, turned into a half monster known as a creature, and then eventually was later killed by another creature named Rivas. Another god that we do not know the name of that worked for Evilus sacrificed himself during the 7 days of blood to summon a monster from the deep floors. So on the first day of the 7 days of blood, 9 gods were sent off to heaven, but only 8 gods were accounted for. And for that is because one of the gods gets sent off to heaven, actually a member of Evilus, is in the deep floors of the dungeon. Q killed himself. The reason for this is because if a god's presence is ever sensed in the dungeon then releases a special irregular on the floor the god's presence is sensed. The deeper the floor, the more powerful the monster that is summoned by the dungeon. As a result, a at least level 7 monstrosity was summoned that was slowly working its way up the dungeon, and the plan was to have that thing just destroy Aurorio. Another member of Evilus is the Ruger Familia. They were a low member of Evilus, filled with a bunch of weaklings. They actively hated the Estrella Familia. In fact, they are the ones who led the Familia into trap in the deep floors. It failed. Of course, it summoned the Juggernaut, which then killed the entire Estrella Familia except for Ryu. Ryu then decided to go on a revenge spree where then she slaughtered the rest of Evilus, actively pursuing to kill the Ruger Familia specifically. The only survivor of this whole ordeal was Jura, a animal person who was actually the mastermind behind the incident that summoned the Juggernaut that slaughtered all of Ryu's Familia. Eventually, Jura himself would also be killed by the Juggernaut when he summoned it a second time. And finally, the most important god in Evilus, Erebus. Erebus is an interesting part of Evilus because he joined late, and his plan was not to actually fulfill Evilus's plan of destroying Aurorio. It was to use Evilus as a catalyst to make the adventures of Aurorio stronger. For his plan to work, he had to recruit the last two members of the Zeus and Hera familiars, Zard and Althea. Both were dying, Althea for disease and Zard of eating the skin of the behemoth, and they didn't want their last moments to be filled with regret of losing to the one-eyed black dragon. They wanted to give hope to the world. They wanted to push the heroes of Aurorio forward, so this way they would be strong enough to fulfill the quest that they could not. And so, this three-man group decided to play the part of the villain, but it couldn't be a trick. They really had to put Aurorio in a situation where the heroes had to step up and win, legitimately. And so this is why Erebus was able to convince the rest of Evilus to follow him and go along with his strategy, because the plan that he came up with, that would be forever known as the 7 Days of Blood, was the plan that came the closest to destroying Aurorio. The plan to use suicide bombers, to use terrorism, to kill gods, to strike as much fear and terror in the soul of Aurorio that he could, at the same time summoning a level 7 monster from the abyss of the dungeon that could destroy and ravish Aurorio, and of course, to cap it all off, forcing the adventurers to fight the two strongest adventurers in the world, Zard and Althea. This truly was a gamble on Erebus' part, because he really wasn't going easy on them. No, the adventurers of Aurorio had to win on their own. They had to prove that they can get stronger, otherwise there's no way they could ever defeat the one-eyed black dragon. So as the god of darkness, he perfectly summarized the idea of, to save the world, you have to be willing to destroy it. And because of this insane levels of darkness, the depth to it, it attracted someone from Evilus to actually join his familia, his only actual familia member. A level 4 named Vito, a level 4 who's originally a member of Thanatos' familia, but once he met Erebus, he couldn't help himself but to join his familia to be a follower of this god. Now, Vito isn't like Zard and Althea. He had no idea that Erebus wanted to lose. He was just trying to force everyone to be stronger. Vito legitimately believed that Erebus was out for destruction, not to save the world. And because of this, when Vito found out at the end what Erebus was actually doing, he actually felt extremely betrayed and vowed revenge. You see, Vito is incapable of seeing color. Everything around him is black and white. The entire world is black and white. That is until one day he saw someone bleed. And that's when he was finally able to see the color red for the first time. The only time he's ever been able to see color. Even his own blood he cannot see. It's black and white. As such, for him to see color in this world, he has to make other people bleed. And so this became an obsession for him, to the point where he went completely insane. His only pleasure in life, greater than drugs, food, sex, alcohol, nothing could compare to seeing the color red, seeing people bleed. Which is why he was such a devout follower of Erebus when he met him, because Erebus could finally give him the world he desired, a world filled with blood. And so when he found out the truth, this betrayal was something that could not accept. Zard and Althea were both killed in battle, and Erebus was sent back to heaven. Vito was injured, but he was able to slink away, plotting his revenge. On who? We don't know, because Erebus is gone. Most likely, he'll target anyone close to Erebus, which in this case was Hermes and Astrea. And finally, there are individuals who were working with Evilus, but did not actually join or be a part of the organization. The Icolos Familia basically had complete ownership of Noxus. The reason for this is because Icolos was the god for pretty much every descendant of Daedalus. They had no real interest of joining Evilus. For one, their god was a lazy bastard who didn't give a shit, not even about his own familia. And two, the Pernix family, the descendants of Daedalus, had no real interest in Evilus as an organization. They just liked the fact that Evilus brought in money so they can build a labyrinth. In exchange for that money, Evilus could then use Noxus as their base of operations. And then, of course, there's Enyo, who turned out to be Dionysus, was aligned with them when they were at their weakest. But the truth is, Dionysus was just using Evilus and Noxus to fulfill his plan to destroy Aurorio for his own reason. And in fact, it was Dionysus who wiped out the last bit of Evilus, because once he didn't need them anymore, well, why keep them? Ishtar also aligned herself with Evilus, but was never an official member. In fact, there's a high possibility if an actual war broke out between Evilus and Aurorio, Ishtar would have sided with Aurorio. Ishtar just wanted to use Evilus to bump off Freya. In fact, as soon as Freya was gone, I guarantee Ishtar would have betrayed them. Because once again, Evilus wants to destroy Aurorio, while Ishtar wants to be the new queen of it. And there are other familiars that they did business with, selling magic items and cursed weapons, and also just employing as assassins or mercenaries. But once again, these people were never actually aligned with Evilus. They were just doing it for the money. And that is the history of Evilus. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up so you can enjoy more Danmachi and other many things. Thank you, and have a great day.